All right. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Aaron Larson, founder of GrandparentsAcademy.com, where we focus on helping grandparents grow meaningful relationships and rich legacies with their loved ones. I am super excited to have you on the call tonight. We're going to cover a lot of valuable information when it comes to how do we make these AGA support groups that we're either a part of or we're leading, how do we make them more effective for everyone in the group? And to lead that discussion, we have a very experienced guest, someone who is very knowledgeable in the subject. She's also one of my favorite people. She's done so much in life in general, but also when it comes to this specific topic of alienated grandparents and what she calls invisible grandparents. And Dr. Pat Hanson is on the line tonight. Her website, invisiblegrandparent.com. Like I said, she's a seasoned health educator, a public speaker, workshop facilitator, and writer residing in California's Monterey Peninsula. She lectures nationally on aging positively, and she's a columnist for grandmagazine.com and Crone, Women Coming of Age, as well. She's also been involved with hospice as a volunteer, and there are many more wonderful things about Pat that I can share with you. But without further ado, I'd like to bring her on the line. Please help me welcome Pat. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Aaron.
So glad to have you on the line again. Yes.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me, and thank Amanda of Alienated Grandparents Anonymous for organizing this for all the people who are participants of facilitating support groups in 50 states and 14 countries that are listed on her website.
Absolutely.
So, no secret, you and I planned this. It's going to be an interview, so we made some slides to go along. And
absolutely. That'll try to keep us on track a little bit, right, Pat?
Yeah. So we give enough time for you to ask questions, type them in the chat box, or do that *2 thing at the end. But the first thing we wanted to know is if any of you are not yet in a support group, how you might start one of your own if there is not one in your part of your state on Amanda's website, or you just want to start one. And clearly the best way to find a support group is to go to our sponsor's website, aga-fl.org. It lists support groups, official ones, that they have helped individuals set up in 50 states and 14 countries. If there isn't one near where you live, you can contact Amanda, make a small contribution, and become a leader, and she will send you all kinds of materials about how to set up a support group and the welcoming procedures that we will use, etc. And then in order to get people there, we will send you, with the replay, a sample press release that you can send to your local papers with the who, what, where, when, and why. And I call mine in Santa Cruz an invisible/alienated grandparent support group. And it's at a small church. It's 4 o'clock to 5:30. The second Monday of every month, a monthly continuing time like that is good. And people put up flyers who are members of the group anywhere, supermarkets, laundromats. And you'll be surprised how many people will walk through your door and go, oh, I'm so glad there's a group like this. I thought I was the only one. Well, no shame about it. There's thousands, if not millions of us out there that can really help by sharing our stories with one another and getting resources from facilitators.
So, Pat, what can participants expect? What can they do when they go to these support groups?
Yeah. Well, the first thing they need to do is listen to the welcome from AGA opening that the reader will read or somebody else would believe that this is a self-help group, not a therapy group, and we learn from each other, and because our situation is unique, we ask you support one another and respect confidentiality. I have people do first name tags, and some people even make up a different name when they share during the meeting. The best thing anybody can do is listen, and do active listening where you have eye contact and you're affirmatively with your body language supporting the people who are speaking. And we don't give advice. Advice comes from trained psychologists and therapists, and I always provide a list of resources both locally and nationally, including AGA and drjoshuacoleman.com. He's the author of When Parents Hurt, Compassionate Strategies for Dealing with Estranged Adult Children. And you direct people for help outside the group, professional help, because when you give advice and somebody does something, they got somebody else to blame. It's just not a good thing to do. And I pass around a voluntary email and phone list that people can take each other's phone numbers so if they want to meet and do activities outside the group. But I don't distribute that widely because of confidentiality. And these are some of the other guidelines that I put in my group based on my other workshop experiences: to listen and respect and honor each other's stories, and to be very aware of the language you use. Be aware of the power of naming. I am feeling depressed is a lot different than I am depressed. If you're feeling it, those feelings can pass. If you are it, it's too much linked to shame. And I always give people the right to pass, but I ask them to note if they don't feel like talking what's going on with them. And suspending judgments, because you're going to hear stories about children, adult children that have been nasty and vociferous, but avoiding judgment about that and just holding it in the space of this is the way it is now and only now. And that helps us lighten about ourselves when we don't judge other people.
So, Pat, I know we have some group leaders on the call this evening. Could you give us some pointers, give them some pointers of what are some of the things they can do to help facilitate these groups?
Besides providing cookies and juice and making sure the windows are open and the room is ventilated or warm and tissues, I like to have an opening and a closing ritual that helps everybody speak. And the opening ritual, you can read aloud the AGA opening that I just told you about, that Amanda will provide you. And then I ask people to introduce themselves, and I sometimes time that literally for 60 seconds about their name, and maybe even start with, I think I put this on the next slide, the introductions. I sometimes ask them to name their own grandmother and say something delightful about themselves that their own grandmother would have said about them, and do that in a circle, go around, something light. At the end, we often hold hands as a group and honor the connection between us and do some affirmative prayer about the connection and the relief and our feelings. And I ask other people to offer a closing, and you'd be surprised how many people chip in. Timing is essential, especially with some people who might dominate a group and other people who are very shy. And I've even used a little tiny timer that you can get at CVX or your local drugstore that counts down the minutes, and you can set it at 3 minutes. And people know that this timer, that they have 3 minutes, and 3 minutes is a long time to tell your story about your alienated or estrangement and where you came from and the ages perhaps of the grandchildren. And believe me, people will fill in the thing. And if people know they have 3 minutes, I would ask, would anybody like to begin? And give the 3-minute timer to them. When they're finished, they pass the timer to the next person that volunteers. Other times I go around the room in a circle, and after I know names, I, talk to people. I also put first name tags on everybody because it's just nice to be able to look at people and use their name. And at our age, our memory for things like that needs affirmation from a name tag. Let's see, what else could leaders do to help? Oh, I always distribute a list of resources to anybody that walks in the room of local mental health resources. Dr. Joshua Coleman's free questions and answers every Monday at 11:30 Pacific time, and his webinars. I can't support those webinars and those free questions and answers more highly. I mean, my degree is in health education and prevention of major diseases. I am not a psychologist or therapist, and he is the best and the most objective, and he knows a lot of related issues like addictions and 12-step programs, and he's the expert. And you can also go to his website and sign up for Skype counseling with him, because I always suggest people get professional help or find a clergy or a teacher or a good friend to guide them through these tough times. And, of course, AGA's org and other websites are on that list. Let's see. This was the introduction I mentioned earlier. Your name, you're the daughter of Mary B. Wilkin is mine. I'm the granddaughter of Helen Whalen. And my grandma would have said about me, you are so smart. You are so creative. And that's what I would like her to say.
So what are some of the other things, Pat? I mean, the thing about you talk in your book about grandmothering yourself in the book Invisible Grandparent, and that is that's a technique I think that I'd like to. I know we have this later on in the presentation, but I almost feel like it's a good time now to talk a little bit more about grandmothering yourself. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, well, for instance, Mother's Day is a very difficult holiday for estranged and alienated grandparents. And so this Mother's Day, I ended, maybe I began with the group and said, are you taking care of yourself through this crisis? I try to keep the focus on the positive as we walk through these difficult times. And I remember the example of my minister went to her mentor, another minister, Dr. Michael Beckwith, and she said, oh, I'm walking through hell, Dr. Michael. And he said, well, keep on walking. Don't set up camp, So I tell them we have to feel our feelings, but the only way out is through. And a lot of grief will come up. And there is a grief recovery support group outline online that's on the list of resources. Because when people don't cry, when people stuff their feelings, they can, especially I know as a health educator, that can come out in all kinds of displaced energy and diseases later on. So we want to feel our feelings, try to focus on the positive and taking care of ourselves as we do this. And so I asked people, how would they grandmother themselves this Mother's Day? What wonderful gift would they have liked? And one person, one of the grandmothers said, here's a certificate for a massage. another person said, here, plant these flowers. Here are seeds for sunflowers, and watch them grow. So that's kind of what I mean by grandmothering yourself.
Yeah,
It
I love
replaces the being cut off from doing it for young people, but we need this kind of energy, this supportive energy at all ages.
Right. And Pat, you touched a little bit upon grief and how that manifests itself in a lot of different ways with people. And for some people, that could be tears and crying. For others, it could be anger. It could cause maybe some outlandish behavior.
It's almost like the 5
groups.
stages of dying and death and dying that Kubler-Ross wrote so much about. First, there's denial. This isn't really happening to me. Then there's maybe some bargaining. Well, if I send more presents or write more letters, maybe things will change. And I always like to think in terms of possibility and reconciliation, but we have to be ridiculous. And then there's anger. Lots of anger can come up. And I have a way to deal with that in an activity that we'll talk about later. And then there's depression and finally acceptance. Because sometimes things aren't going to change and we have to accept what is and take care of ourselves. And with gratitude, look at the next best thing in our life. Like I'm looking out at my garden through glass windows now and I can see the petunias in the hanging basket. If we have to just focus on that after feeling the feelings, we can get through.
Yeah, and I could see how, as a support leader as well, how beneficial it would be for a leader to really start to research the stages of grief, as you mentioned, some of the things that could come up when they're leading a group, and maybe some best practices when it comes to what do you do in that situation.
Yeah.
Now, another thing, as a leader of the group, I imagine there are probably instances when you need to deal with difficult people. And what are some of the tips you have for that, Pat?
Yeah, well, that's going to happen to anybody. And this Mother's Day group, somebody walked into my group that is an activist, and she's forming her own organization because Child Protective Services did some very terrible things to her people. And she had an agenda, and she wanted to tell us about her agenda, and I calmly told her that that's wonderful if she wanted to do that kind of activism, that there were other places she could do it, but her story and healing her energy is what this support group was about. So she started to tell her story, and it was awful. It had 2 murders in it of children, in gang-related areas. And I went, and all the participants are focusing completely on her. And sometimes there can be people in a group that walk into this that are projecting some of their own issues that aren't resolved. And so I got her to focus on her healing and her story and her grief. And I asked her, because she had turned all her energy into this activism, and she even brought flyers of this new group on Child Protective Services, because I'm all for activism, but I'm not for it during the support group. So I asked her when was the last time she cried, and she said, "Oh, I can't cry about this. I'd cry forever." I go, you might just find a safe, supportive place when you're alone and let it happen. So that's how I dealt with that difficulting person. And then there are always people who like to talk more than the others. That's called grandstanding. And that's why I use that timer. And if you speak less than 3 minutes, great. If you speak more, the buzzer will make you wind up, and people can see it as they count down. It's really a useful thing. A third thing that can happen with difficult people is they use buzzwords and labels. My daughter's narcissistic, or she had bipolar disease, or she has multiple personality disorder. And basically, only trained psychologists can put those labels on people. I push that we look for the human being inside the external narcissistic daughter doing, the ways they've hurt people. And I try to avoid the labels and look at the humanness and the vulnerability and the potential for people to heal with this.
Yeah, and you mentioned when you were talking about that some of the activities that you've mentioned already, a few of the things that you do. I wonder, can we talk a little bit more about some other activities that you engage in when it comes to leading the group? You
Sure,
mentioned you had a process, especially for when it comes to dispelling anger.
Yeah, well, clearly my book, Invisible Grandparenting, is about leave a legacy of love, whether you can be there or not. And what I dealt with to deal with my pain from cutting off is I wrote letters to my grandchild, Annie, in the book, as about all the places we would go, Santa Barbara, New York City, Radio Hall at Christmas, and all the things we could do. I even wrote letters about peace when I saw a memorial for the soldiers that had been killed in Iraq, and I put a picture of that in. All of this is at my website, invisiblegrandparent.com. And in my group, I had one activity where I brought scrap paper and I had people write one letter saying what in their bones do they know that they want their grandkids to know. Like, what have they learned in life that they'd like their grandchild to go? And then as many as wanted to read those letters, and they're beautiful, beautiful. People want to express good. I also, in a separate workshop, because most of the people had bought my book and read my book or gone to the website, in order to diffuse that negative energy and the anger that I mentioned earlier, I had people write letters on scrap paper about their angry feelings, like, how could you do this to me? You da-da-da-da, you da-da-da-da, use the bad words, whatever. And then we crumple those letters up and we put them in a bowl. And I pretended it was a burning bowl because I actually did this. And I danced in the moonlight to Janis Joplin's Take a Piece of My Heart, and that released some of the negative energy. And then I do exercises on forgiveness, too. Forgiving that parent for wanting to wipe every memory of my son, who was a bad boy at the time, the father of her child when she was 4, out of her life, and that included me. I could forgive her for that pretty much. You hear that forgiveness is an ongoing project. Yeah, so there's lots of things, and I'd love to hear from the support group leaders here other activities they've done. In fact, we could continue on another month and have all of them share all kinds of activities.
Absolutely.
One other thing I recommend is an activity that I took your 6-week workshop on, leaving a digital legacy. And I didn't even know what Pinterest was, or some of the online apps you can download that kids can find you on Facebook. Tell us about Grow Your Digital Legacy. Because people can pair up and do this on their own outside your group, or they could do it as homework and come back.
Yeah, so we did a little, very small group. We haven't released this course yet. We did a very small group just to kind of see how it would work. And it just kind of goes on the idea that technology is everywhere. And especially for a group of grandparents who have tried everything. They've tried sending the letters that get rejected, the gifts that get rejected. And here I'm thinking, well, how can I help with this? And my expertise is basically using technology, online tools like social media, and helping companies really tell their story online. So I thought, well, how can I use those tools and what I know about that and apply it to help grandparents create meaningful relationships, especially those who are being distanced from their grandkids. And, one of the things, you went through that course, Pat, and one of the things as I was creating the course, I kept learning more and more things about these programs, these opportunities to interact that I didn't even know before I started creating the course, like how you can use YouTube without even having a camera to create a video that you can customize for your grandkids. And I think you remember we used the clips of there's an orangutan and a tiger, baby tiger playing together, and we made a birthday video for an imaginary grandson during the course, and kind of walk through how to do that. But the whole thing is, Pat, and we talked about this in the course, there's like 80% of toddlers, age 3, they're getting online at such a young age. And, you walk around and you see little kids, they're on the tablets, they're on the mobile phones, they're online. And what a great opportunity it is for grandparents to grow a digital legacy, to be there when those grandkids do search you out, because they will search you out. So having something there, that's what the whole course is about. And I'll send a link. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to give you some feedback on it, because this could be for any grandparents to find a way to communicate with their descendants by Pinterest. I didn't even know what it was. It's a little bird, I think, on the symbols with share and Facebook. And you make sort of a bulletin board with tags of all your favorite activities: kayaking, gardening, watching movies, going to the zoo, and then you have different categories. And it's pretty simple. The digital legacy online training that Aaron has, that people can purchase or buy, you could download yourself and with a partner from the support group go through it and stop and start it. Because if you sit there and listen to the whole thing, you're not going to remember it. But the beauty of these webinars is that you can replay them and manipulate and rewind. It's like the rewind on the TV or the closed caption on the TV, which I have to watch. If I don't understand something, I stop at the DVR and go back and hear what somebody said. So it's easier than you think to communicate with your kids.
Oh, yeah.
Whether
if you can click a mouse.
Online.
Yeah, if you can click a mouse, you can do it. And that's the thing, too, is that these videos, and I'll just mention one more thing. These videos, you can, I have them recorded in a way that it looks just like if you were looking on your screen. So you can see exactly what to click, what not to click, what it's going to look like. So I think that really helps with the education process with it as well. And that's the thing. I have a free training coming up on that. I'll send you guys a link on it. But I know we want to move on to some more parts of this call. So I'm really excited about it. I hope you do check it out. There's a link on that page, actually down below, where you can register for the free training, and we can talk more about that. And another thing, while we're on that topic, though, Pat, you mentioned your process in the legacy letter writing process, and we did a course, an online course on that a while back. And I know I'm looking at the people who are on this call. There are a couple people who actually took that class on this call, and I know one of them specifically, she wrote a really glowing testimonial. I don't have it memorized, but she just had a great time going through that process together with folks from all over the country online, going through this process of writing legacy letters. And we'll have a link to that course. That's available. It's another thing where you can start it as a group or work through it as a group as well. But that's I just want to make sure we mention that resource that we have there as well, because you don't have to travel all the way to California to be with Pat in her group, which I'm sure she would love if you came to visit her.
I would love to come to your state, actually, because I
yeah.
do 6-hour workshops in churches and grain calls. We don't have to worry about that right now. Yeah.
Right, but if you want something immediate and you want to go online, it's there for you too. So either way, it's just a great process. Let's move on to the
Q&A.
next,
I think.
Yeah, we're getting right into Q&A.
We talked about grandmother and yourself.
Right. So how this works is, if you have a question or comment, we'd love to hear it. And if you're on a phone, what you can do is press *2 to raise your hand, and then I will moderate those questions and bring you on the line. If you're looking at the grandparentsacademy.com website, on the page with the slides, there is a box in the lower left-hand corner that says submit your question for the event here. So you can put your question there, and we can ask, I can read them off on here as well. So lots of different ways to ask a question, and we are going to go ahead and bring a person on the line here. Okay, I believe, yes. And I'm going to respect your confidentiality, so I'm just going to bring you on the line and say that this person is from South Carolina. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I certainly can. Thank you.
And would you mind giving us your name, or would you like to keep that confidential?
I don't mind a bit. My name is Fletcher Spigner III.
Hi, welcome to the call.
I live in Columbia, South Carolina.
All right. Well, tell us, do you have a question for Pat?
I do, and I'm not sure I hope it's appropriate. If it's not, you can defer me to somewhere else.
Sure.
But it'll take about 45 seconds, and then I'll listen, okay?
Sounds great. Go ahead.
My son and daughter-in-law, who are local high school administrators and teachers, cut us off from our 3 grandchildren for no reason 15 months ago with no notice and no warning. They have also shunned her parents for years. Under the radar, we have tried everything without going public. They come from very well-known families in our state. What do we do now?
That is a perfect question for Dr. Joshua Coleman's free question and answer and his webinars on Mondays, because it's very difficult for me to advise you or even suggest. And going public when they indeed are school teachers, you could get involved in lots of ramifications. I would say you get to a support group and get some of your feelings out and move maybe even some of the negative energy out in the burn the letters and dance to the moonlight and put on Janis Joplin way. Work on your own feelings and take care of yourself. And then consider strategies. And maybe consider strategies for action and graduate them in your support group.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would add too. That's great suggestions from Pat. One thing I would add. Can you tell me real quick, how old are your grandchildren?
They are almost. 2 of them are almost 5, and 1 of them is almost 3.
Okay. All right. So
we had very, very close relationships with the 2 5-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very sorry that you're going through this, and I think they're at a very young age. One thing you could do, and this is what I tell grandparents in the Grow Your Digital Legacy course too, is we talk about the buzzing bloom approach, and that's a way of communicating your legacy and what you want your grandkids to know about you without kind of sticking your hand into the beehive and getting stung and having to deal with the ramifications of you going public in your case, or what that would be. We don't want to cause any harm, right? So one of the things I would recommend is if you're not on Facebook, or if you haven't started a blog, you can start to write things about your life. You can start to share inspiring photos, stories about your life that will allow your grandkids, when they start to search for you online, which won't be very much, they might already do it, but it won't be long before they do. It shows that you invested in the time, even though you're being blocked from them, you invested in them indirectly by communicating your legacy and growing it online. So that's just a suggestion, is definitely don't give up and go to the support groups and, seek out Dr. Coleman.
Actually, there is on the resource list, there's an organization called GRA USASC. There's a support and website for grandparents' rights organization in South Carolina, started by a man. Yeah, I'm just looking up his email right now. John is all the name that I have. But that is on the resource list that you will be able to get when Aaron uploads the thing. So you've got help right there in that. And I believe he's in Easley, South Carolina.
Correct. Yeah, and we haven't contacted him yet, but we are aware of him, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's got a very good, he had some health issues recently, so it may take a while for him to get back to you. He's one of the few that offered to sell my book on his website, so bless him. Thank you.
So you love him.
From group leaders about running groups. Are there any of those, Aaron?
Yeah, was that helpful, Fletcher?
It is. Let me say one thing before you drop me out.
Sure.
We really want to commend you all for addressing these issues. This is an epidemic like you wouldn't believe. Our situation is unbelievable. My uncle was the first family court judge in South Carolina. My grandfather and great-grandfather were child protectors as solicitors and senators. And now we are dealing with being alienated from our grandchildren. And my daughter-in-law's parents have been shunned as well. And it is unbelievable that this is occurring in our state and in our family.
Absolutely. And
well, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, my heart goes
You're
out
not
for
alone,
you.
Unfortunately. And there's a whole movement of phenomenon of help to change policy, to change laws, to have support groups like this for healing. And so you can be part of that movement.
Absolutely.
And we are.
Okay.
Great.
And
well, don't give up, Fletcher.
Thank you both. We really do appreciate it. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we have another question here. All right, and I know who this is, and I'm pretty sure she wouldn't mind me saying who it is. But just in case, this one's from Thornhill, Ontario.
Hi, Pat. Hi, Aaron. It's Rhonda.
Hey, Rhonda.
How are you? And I do want to say, Pat, I think of you and you, Aaron, so much. I've written about over 30 letters already to my granddaughter in a hope box that I actually found in the house, and I try to make it kind of creative and artsy. My question was, I did write one where it says that she should open it when she's about 18 years old, because I thought, I don't know if it was appropriate to share with her if that I am an alienated, or I was an alienated grandmother, but I didn't badmouth her mother, but I just said, sometimes in families there's conflict or there's expectations, and people have expectations and they get there's, people get upset about things, or there's different beliefs or philosophies, and it's never okay for loving people to be alienated, but we really missed you and loved you. Is that an appropriate thing to write to share with her one day?
I think that's beautiful, and how you put it about, sometimes stressful situations happen between family members, and, they get in the way of the love that is there and the acceptance. I wouldn't even hold it till she was 18.
Okay.
I thought when you said, because I wrote some letters about, in answer to a hypothetical question, you were married 3 times, Grandma, why? That I explained what was good and why I left the first 2 marriages, and then what was wonderful and the gifts in each of them. Something about that or becoming a woman I thought you were going to refer to when she said she was 18. I think the way that you wrote that now, it definitely belongs in your chest, your treasure trove of memories, and just save it and don't date it. If you make it 18, you might have to wait, because sometimes when we visualize things, they happen.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put a date on anything.
Okay. Okay, and I just keep writing it. Right. I wrote one about Florida because she goes to Florida a lot, and I really made it like a visual and used a lot of the senses in it, like, as if I was with her. This is what I would do with her. I would walk along the beach, and we'd feel the wind in our hair, and I added my husband in it. So that, I'm just praying that she'll get it one day, that she'll
Absolutely. That's what I do with my letters, because I continue them. And I honor you for digging in and continuing this process. And what we focus on happens. That's why we don't want to focus on the negative energy. We want to dispel that and release it. And things can happen. A woman in my Santa Cruz support group had not seen twin babies for 2 years that her daughter had, and their daughter's husband, they moved far away, but no contact, returned emails. There was a funeral because her brother died, and the daughter showed up with the twin babies and had a reconciliation with the mother, and they came down on Valentine's Day. She never expected that. Never in a million years. And it took a death to bring life to this relationship. And I don't want that to happen for anyone. But think in possibilities. That's how I end my groups. We can't plan plans and be sure of the results, because reconciliation, especially if legal matters are involved, takes a long time. But anything's possible. My minister says if you can imagine it, that's probably not it. But start with the imagining.
Right. We're working with our son just because, he actually came over for Mother's Day, which was a blessing. He came himself. And that was the first time in 3 years, so that was a huge step. And I'm just working with him in a positive way, because the Dale is impossible for us to deal with. She doesn't want to deal with us at all, so we're just trying to be as positive as we can in this difficult.
Yeah. Well, Aaron's digital legacy workshop would be good, too.
Okay.
You mentioned all the kind of activities. But find another friend that you can do it with. That's computer savvy and can, talk you through the stop and start and things like that.
Yeah, and Rhonda, I am so thank you for sharing the great news. I'm so excited and happy that things are working in the right direction for you. I mean, baby steps, right? And it's you'll get there. You'll get there. Don't give up.
Okay,
it's
thank you.
Great to hear your voice.
And great to hear you too, Aaron. Thank you for all your support, and Pat too.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right.
Anybody
Pat,
else?
we do have some more questions. Yeah, let's see here. We have, this is a really interesting question that was submitted through the online form. It says, this is from a person in Toronto. It says, what is the difference between giving advice and giving support?
That's a very good question. Giving support honors a person's process where they are. Giving advice is telling them something to do. There was a woman that came to my support group that was quite domineering, and she hasn't come back. And she said, you should look up that 14-year-old on Facebook, And she said to somebody else, you should do this. Let's let the shoulds go. That's advice. I'm not quite ready for that 14-year-old's mother to know that I want to befriend her daughter if she's even there. I'm just not ready yet. So I did not take that advice yet, but she did make me think about it, So I think that's it. Advice is do something. Support is we care, we understand, we empathize, we know your pain. That's it.
Right, and also probably part of that too is directing towards resources and experts who can give the advice, who have the
Absolutely.
training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. Another question from Milford, Delaware. It says, just starting our group. We have been to a couple churches talking with ministers, also our local police department, and a few political conferences. How do you get the folks to the meeting?
How do you get
the folks
policymakers to meetings?
That's a good question.
Read me the question again.
So just starting our group, have been to a couple churches talking with ministers, also our local police department, and a few political conferences. How do you get the folks to the meeting? I think they're talking mostly about grandparents, how to get to the grandparents in the meeting.
Well, I made the announcements personally in the church that I hold the group in, and 4 people showed up the first meeting. And then I kept putting it in the paper, and they keep it in their bulletin at the back of the church every month. And so most of the original 6 or so are church members, but then by putting it in the local weeklies with just invisible, alienated grandparent support group and your contact information and phone number, I've gotten probably a dozen calls over the last 9 months that I've been running the group. That's not a lot. You're not going to, sometimes it will just be 2 or 3 people, but it's supportive. So get it out in the media and spread the word that way. And I do trainings for therapists because your average marriage and family counselor might know about this issue and might not know about this phenomenon with AGA International and Grand USA, which we're going to let you know about June 14th being Alienated Grandparents Awareness Day, or Grand USA in South Carolina like that man did. The more places you can get stuff in the media, that'll bring people to you. Trust me.
Right. Yeah.
I'll send my book to your local library if you email me. Yeah.
There you go.
Putting books in the
also,
library.
You were saying, Pat, it was. I think that's a great suggestion. Networking and getting in touch with local therapists, and because I feel like. And I'm not a therapist, so I don't know, but I feel like that might be something a therapist might recommend to some of their patients is, well, we have support groups, too, that you can
Absolutely.
Also
Absolutely.
You never know. So, yeah, that's a great suggestion. We have another one here, Pat. It's asking kind of about the dynamics of the group, and this person asks, is your group all women, and can you make suggestions for Father's Day?
Oh, that's a great question. And my group started to be all women. And two women drive down from Felton, which is an hour and 15 minutes away up in the Redwoods above Santa Cruz. But last month, one woman's husband came, and he said, I want to support my wife in this process. And another man also showed up another time that through, the divorces of his children had been separated for a long period of time. So the men will walk through that door when they see the notice. And Father's Day, excellent idea. I'm thinking out loud. I would, in your local media support, maybe put for not just women, fathers who are estranged, because many more fathers are estranged because of divorce and complicated custody issues. And even my son, who now is married and has a beautiful granddaughter, Sierra, and he cleaned up his act 6 years ago. Every October 24th on Annie's birthday, he cries. His wife tells me that. So, but men aren't trained to be okay with showing their feelings, and a support group could help.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah,
and if I think of it, you can email me at Pat@InvisibleGrandparent, and if I come up with some more Father's Day ideas, they'll be on my blog. Yeah.
Oh, there
Great
we go.
Question.
That'd be great. Another one here, and this is kind of more of an organizational question, and this might be a better question for Amanda, Pat, but if you know the answer, it would be a good one. It's, how do you raise money for expenses like brochures, photocopying, flyer, tea, and cookies if you're leading a group?
Well, that's a good question. We don't pass the hat in this group, but I run some other groups where they pass the hat and ask anybody to make a love offering, $1, $2, put it in an envelope to offset the Xerox and the postage cost. And I see nothing wrong with doing that, as long as people have an option to do it or not do it.
Right. Perfect.
There are local community. My allergies here in the springtime in California are finally exhausting my voice. There are local community foundations that give money to community projects, and this would qualify if anybody has those kinds of skills.
Oh, there you go. And Pat, do you think you could do one or two more questions?
Sure. Let me have some water first while you ask.
Great. We have a question here that is from a person in Pennsylvania, and this person asks, I have been alienated from my grandson for almost 5 months now, through no fault of my own, by my son and his fiancée. My grandson just turned 2 a few weeks ago. I have his Christmas, Easter, and birthday gifts. My son will, quote, unquote, tease me, if you will, that he is going to bring my grandson over and get the gifts. My question is, how long do I keep the gifts? He's surely outgrown the Christmas and Easter gifts. I am positive down the road if I donate them or give them away, they will tell him later on in life that I never even got him anything for the holiday, birthday, etc. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, that's a perfect question for Mondays at 11:30 California time, Dr. Joshua Coleman, because that's the kind he gets all the time. I would keep them as, quote, evidence of your thoughtfulness and good luck. You may mail them, but many grandparents that I've spoken to get them returned. Or the next time, think of an intangible gift like a ride to the zoo or an experience. It's something they wouldn't grow out of. But gifts are a big issue for all estranged adults and grandadults. And just knowing from your heart that you're still giving and thinking of them is the good thing. Pass that information on and pray.
Yeah, absolutely. We have one more, and we'll just do a last call for questions here. If you have a question, again, you can press *2 or submit the question through the online form on the page. This will be the last question unless there's one more. And this question also comes from Pennsylvania, and it asks, should I include in a letter to my granddaughter that I want to come out to Phoenix across the country for a short visit to see her, if it would be okay with her mother, or should I put it in a letter to her mother instead?
Again, Joshua Coleman's so good at this. I'll have to listen to his a little more and pick up some tips. My first reaction is do both. But be very careful with your wording. I don't know what the estrangement is about, but you could suggest that the distance is becoming overwhelming and you'd love to come at X and X time and be with them and suggest some of the things you might like to do. And as you release those envelopes to the universe, think in possibilities and pray.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say, how old is the grandchild there? That's a
I would just, we just got some context to that. It says, I've not seen my granddaughter in Arizona since she was 3. She's now 9.
9. Well, a 9-year-old could certainly understand that, and I think can still remember stuff that goes on at 3. Yeah. Or you might introduce yourself a little differently with a picture, even, of when she was 3, and, I would love to know what you look like now as you're growing up. That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
2 different ways. It's Pat Hanson's answer. And if you ask Joshua Coleman, please email me and let me know what he says.
There you go. Well, thank you, everyone. Before we wrap up here, thank you for the questions. I just want to make another announcement that actually coming up here on June 14th is National Grandparent Alienation Awareness Day, and that's sponsored by GRAND USA, which is Grandparents' Rights Advocates National Delegation. You can find out more about them on grand-usa.org. Great organization headed by Lily Black. I definitely recommend you take a look at that, and if you feel called towards advocacy, it's a great way to get involved. Pat, thank you so much again for volunteering your time and your expertise, your knowledge, just to help folks not only be part of a support group, but also lend some ideas about how to more effectively lead a group so that we can impact the lives of more and more people. So thank you for being on the call.
Okay, I'm honored to be on a call. And a couple of years ago, I asked about my writing because I retired to writing after academia. I wanted my voice heard at the highest level to do the greatest good. And writing about teaching human sexuality at the college level, which I have a book about, did not come up. This did. And so I must be listened to by people that are, and it's doing good. So this is my work right now, and I'm honored to be doing it with all of you.
Thank you, Pat. And for all of you who have not read Pat's book, Invisible Grandparenting, Leave a Legacy of Love, Whether You Can Be There or Not, highly recommend it. I've read it myself. Even though I'm not a grandparent, it definitely spoke to me in some of the situations that I've experienced in my life. It's a great process to go through. So you can find that on Amazon.com. Again, I'm going to send out a link to a website. This will probably be tomorrow by the time I get to it, because it's about dinner time for me now. So I'll get to it. I will send you a link, and you'll be able to listen to the recording again. And then Pat has several resources that she mentioned on this call that will be available for download that we will have there all in one place. And again, I just want to thank you all for being on the call. You are in our hearts. You are in our prayers. And no matter what happens, don't give up. There's always another way. Keep fighting the fight. Anything you'd like to add, Pat?
That's about it. We can all live a legacy of love, whether we're there or not.
Absolutely. All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.